everybody. Unscheduled. I wasn't going to do one tonight, but however, it turns out I can do one. So I just thought I'd keep touch base for you anyway. I don't think we've much to speak about because I haven't took note of anything that's gone on this week. Because of course, you can see the background. We're on the move. So moving's going down. And that's why I suggested I may not be able to do a live stream. So we have. And here I am, just to say. So I think probably we're not going to get many on because of course we did say last week that we weren't going to be doing one. But anyway, I thought there's a couple of things that I was messing around with today actually. Just made me think, that would be an interesting investigation. I was looking at the picture in my mind of the Last Supper image. And I just thought to myself, so why is it all about his mother and his bird? You know what I'm saying? Two females. The one boy, no sign of father anywhere, is there? No sign of father. What could that be? So when you start to look at what they do in the back end at the hospital, it's how can I say it? It could actually be symbolising a bit further the take we took last week when we looked at Mark the Serpent King's or Marco's take on Jesus fulfilling the law by being person and ending in death, i.e. if you're going to take on the person, you're going to die. Two Marys, yeah. And it was just interesting because I've never thought of it in this way before, but that's because we've been looking at just a little bit deeper into how this this first part of the trust, we think, which is created when mum goes and signs on to the hospital shindig, basically becomes a patient as a pregnant mother, because it's all about the females, it's all about the mother's name carrying through. It's just strange how it just could possibly have a bit of bearing on the symbolism, and it's so I thought, well, okay, I've not analysed it any further than that today, but I did bring up disciple, and when I looked at it on the etymology, I was quite surprised because it brings up further insights into potentially what Marco wrote, what we presented last week through Marco, could actually have some teeth, and that the symbolism of it is basically teaching us that, you mustn't be person, because you're going to die, you're dead, you're going to be administered as a dead entity. Anyway, that aside, it's the only thing I could think of really to come up with for tonight, because I've not paid attention to anything this week, because obviously it's all been about moving. The millennial reign of Christ has already happened. I agree. But now I've said this also before, that everything is duality, isn't it? There's two sides to everything. And the mimic, what this system, the world, Satan, Lucifer, Loki, whatever name you want to attribute to it, is all about mimicking the creation, and that's the world. So I've presented that to you in the past as perhaps looking at Genesis 1 as different to Genesis 2. The creation of man, male, female, and then in Genesis 2, it's one God, it's Adam, and a woman is created. Now, completely separate gigs, completely separate meanings, and from the garden, eating of the apple, they're in sin. Everybody is said to be being born in sin, and of course, you look at Jesus' words, and it can be taken two sides. Again, the key to it for me is the fact that he states the kingdom of the Father is within, because that's profound. The rest of his parables, etc., you can associate either to law, you can associate it to astrology. There's all sorts of different sciences you can apply to it, and it makes sense. But the person side of things, it has always made me wonder why. Where's the no father? No earthly father, really, much involved. It's a bit of a because he's not actually involved, if this is correct, in the machinations that are going on between mother, haplessly ignorant mother, you know, and the Knights Hospitallers, because the hospitals are the temples of the Knight Hospitallers, who work for who? Well, the Templars, aren't they all part of the same? Because if we are to believe the Templar wealth was supposed to have been handed to the Hospitallers. So there's definitely something in it, without a doubt, of the mimic. So on the one hand, there's the understanding that everybody has in relation to Jesus, which comes through the religion. And then if you sort of look at his words, certain parts of them at different times that he says them, again you can see that he's also referencing Genesis 1, house of my father, etc., etc. But of course the mimic would then have taken it to mean something else, because they've created what we might call a clone of the original meaning, to mean. So he brings forth Genesis 1 in parts, but also he's fulfilling what you would class as following the law if you're a person and being subject to it, ultimately leading to his persecution and his death. Symbolic, is it not? It's all symbolic. So I'll just see who we have got here. Well, we've got 14 of you, so jolly good. Thanks for joining me, even though I said it weren't. So Debbie says good evening Debbie. Mew says yo yo yo, hello to you. Mark says evening, Paul says evening Sean, and everyone happy new year. It is indeed. And of course remember this, because this is important, another thing I'm musing on, how April is so important, because in the old Earth calendar the new year is April the 1st, or as religion would call it, the pagan new year. Yet the height of the satanic beginning of its new year is April the 30th. So within that 1 month of April, we've got Mars, it's Aries, yeah, the beginning of the actual calendar on the sidereal, which is important information that you can glean from what Claudio has pulled together. So there's definitely an important thing, April, and all its associations, and you get the old earthly new year on the 1st of April, and the satanic new year begins on the 30th. So I thought, well, obviously then they are operating what you class as pagan, but then obviously if they have their own new year, and it follows on from, as is Genesis 1 is a 7-day gig, followed by the second creation on the 8th day, then could we then suggest that the month of April is also a sign that the same is following Earth New Year, which is Genesis 1, because it's all about the Earth, and then this satanic world New Year. Because if that's the case, then even the idea of paganism has been completely and utterly confused, has it not? Because we see paganism, because that's what the religions teach us, as being the satanic side of Cain in the garden, still in the garden. Yet, if we are to really understand how the earth works, etc., and we're back in Genesis 1, because that's all it speaks of, heavens, earth, plants, animals, and man, male, female. Yeah, different. So is that month of April again showing us how one follows another? Maybe. There were interesting thoughts that I had this week, and I just thought, I need to mull on those a bit more. But I thought it is interesting that within the same month you have the original calendar for the earth, and then you have the satanic mockery, the mimic of it, and the inverse. So your birthday is on the 30th. Well, the date in and of itself isn't evil, is it? It's just that that's the choice. Because Walpurgis night, which is the night before, the evening before, is the satanic new year. That's when they're doing all the ritual, all the nasty stuff. Well, they're doing it all the time, but these are especially important times for them because they're classing that as the new year. So it is interesting. So they do, what I do know from my past experience is April is an exceptionally busy month for them. Yeah, the 19th of April is May, well, 19th is another interesting date as well, isn't it? You look back in history. See, what I used to do as well were interesting is you go in Google and put something like main events of, and then a year. Yeah, on a date perhaps. So maybe 19th of April events. And you've got Waco. It all attaches to the burning ceremony of people as the forerunner ritual to Molech before they get to the high feast on the 30th. So it doesn't matter that that's your birthdays. Obviously, we're talking about the mimic. So obviously then, both the 30th and the 19th are powerful days in and of themselves. So if you look at it that way, but these mimickers are moving it and doing other things on those days. And 19 again is another important number, is it not? Which is why we have the bug 19, etc., etc. So there are always loads of symbolism to pull in, always. But April is a month in which I know that the dark side are very active. And I think what they're trying to do is scupper a lot of what moves across the April 1st pagan New Year so that they can screw it up. And then their feast, for whatever they've achieved in that period, is then celebrated and put into force on April the 30th. So, interesting stuff, is it not? But so, back to the wondering, why is it that the two mirrors are just so important in the game? So I thought to myself, okay, so best way to approach that. What does disciple, what does it break down to etymologically? So Anthony says, Jesus Ladorfan constellation Cetus Eris aligns with Cetus and sits just slightly above as per line of sight. Can you expand on that a bit? Because yeah, it sounds like interesting data, but how does that fit in with what we're just talking about there? So if you could expand that, Anthony, that'd be nice. So we're going to have a look so we'll look at it together, because I've looked at it a couple of times, thought, ooh, but didn't really give it any credence as to really analyse it. So we may be wise to do that together. So I'll read it through. Anything that you see, feel free to place comment in there and we'll analyse it. We'll have a look at it, because we need to know this stuff. You know, it's important that we understand all the data available when it comes to trying to get a grip of what the hell's happened. How could such a great doctrine as found in the Gospel and also in the Buddhist teaching be turned asunder into what it's become today? There's got to be some misunderstandings somewhere, some wizardry going on all around for it to come to this. Because the people in the West left the church because it had gone up its arse in the same way it did, which gave us the Reformation. So it wasn't the flock, it was the flock reacting to the actual institution going crazy. So there's obviously something gone wrong, and it's not at the bottom side of it, it's at the top end. So here we've got disciple, it's a noun. It said Old English, disciple, and its feminine is discipular. One who follows another for the purpose of learning, especially the personal followers of Jesus Christ during his life. The 12 apostles chosen or called by him to be his immediate associates. A biblical borrowing from the Latin discipulus, or pupil, student, follower, which is of uncertain origin. Now, this in relation to Jesus, it only came about in the 1300s. So, you know, if they're expecting us to accept that this gig is a 2,000-year-old game, then why was it not used in relation to the man for the first 1,000 years, or 1,300 years, as it might say? So there's obviously there's more to be known in that. Now it says in O.E.D. and Watkins, it is said to be from discere, to learn, from a reduplicated form of the pi root dec, to take, accept. But according to Barnhart and Klein, it is from a lost compound, discipere, to grasp, intellectually, analyse thoroughly, from dis, and then apart, see dis. Now this is exceptionally important. So when I saw that coming on this definition, it made me wonder. And it says plus compare, to take hold of, from root cap, to grasp. Divan finds the ending polus, difficult to explain in the former theory, and the latter semantically not compelling. It was not common in Old English, so this is Old English, where the usual word was liorningslicht, and in some cases pegni, or see thane. Well, thane was the title given in the early English system, who sort of like were in charge of a town, as it were. The pre-Christian Latin sense of scholar, pupil, student is rare in English, meaning one who follows or is influenced by the doctrine or example of another, is from 1300. Okay, so there you can see that the use of this term disciple came up about 1300 AD. Why would that be the case if this is like, nearly a 2,000-year-old gig? Doesn't make sense to me. It says discipleship, again, a noun, state or condition of being a follower of another in doctrines and precepts. 1540s, from disciple plus ship, so the discipleship. So we've got there, we can see there's a bit of, we've got admiralty coming in there, discipleship. Yeah? Interesting, I thought, here. It's just weird. But we'll have a look at this dis in a minute, because that, again, it's rather telling. Now, so we've also got discipline there as well, which is penitential, chastisement, punishment for the sake of correction. Right, so if we're looking at the idea as brought forward through Marco last week, that you could actually look at that symbolism of the Jesus story as being, this is what happens when you're actually playing the law as a person, you're going to die, maybe. So then that would bring into to bear this penitential chastisement, punishment for the sake of correction, because was he not being corrected? Or so, yeah, from Old French, discipline, or discipline, physical punishment, teaching, suffering, martyrdom. Yeah, 11th century modern French, discipline, and directly from Latin, disciplina, instruction, given, teaching, learning, knowledge, also object of instruction. Knowledge, science, military discipline, from discipulus, pupil, student, follower, see, disciple. So there we go. The Latin word is glossed in Old English by pedicipe, the meaning, treatment that corrects or punishes. Is from the notion of order necessary for instruction, meaning branch of instruction or education, is first recorded in late 14th century, meaning system of rules and regulations is from mid 14th century. So again, these are all late post-crusade stuff, all these meanings that we are being told we throw forward back 2,000 years. Clearly they're not. Via the notion of training to follow orders and act in accordance with rules that of orderly conduct as a result of training, is from 1500. Sense of system by which the practice of a church is regulated. Laws which bind the subjects of a church in their conduct, is from the 1570s. So all this is late stuff, isn't it? It's very old. It's not. It's very new. It's not old as we'd expect. We'd be finding these etymology origins going way back, and they don't. So clearly, there is some teeth to an idea that I've always. So let's say it's not been rebuffed in any way, shape, or form. That this old thing that we take as a 2,000-year-old system is actually just 1,000 years old, which would also work in the sense that Christ had a 1,000-year reign. Well, isn't it over? It's coming to its end, is it not? And who is it that's supposed to be taking up the reins at this point? Well, it's the world, isn't it? The antagonist, Lucifer or Satan, whichever word or term you use, Iblis, if you're coming from the Islamic perspective. Now, dis. in my old looking into this, because obviously I studied the Druids as much as you can find back in the day, in written form, I think a lot of the Druid kind of system actually comes from within, which is why you don't find much in as many. You could read 20, 40 books and you're not really going to move any further from the discourse that you'll find in them all. They just keep within a set system, but it does make sense in a lot of cases, because it's basically explaining the mystery schools, how the mystery schools work. So that's pre-Greek, because the Greek mystery schools, that's all about the labyrinth, etc. A lot of the Greek myths are all basically insights into how the mystery schools operate. So, but you wouldn't see or understand that, of course, if you've never had any experience of that. So, now dis, it says word forming element of Latin origin meaning one, lack of, not, as in dishonest, opposite of, do the opposite of. Now, the Druid dis. So if you get into that old Atlantean, Hyperborean, Irish data, which we've covered a little bit in some of these live streams, what's pretty clear is that at some point way back, so this is before Rome, the actual system, or the Church of Aisa, if you believe that, that was centred around Ireland and the British Isles, was actually taken over. And it was taken over by the Phoenicians, and they were then named the Druidis. And that this is where this priesthood that we have today on the Mimic actually took the old ancient knowledge and formulated it into its own great work, which is what we're suffering today. So the dis side of things, the Druidis specifically, are those as Druids at the time when Rome attacked. Now, would that be why Rome attacked it? Because of course it would obviously be seen as part of the Carthaginian imperial side, which eventually did take over Rome and turn Rome into a shadow of what it should have been. Now, whether that happened at when and where, we don't know. We just know that if you actually look at the way the trusts have been formed, that it is in sync entirely with upholding this person, this eternal Holy Spirit. That if we're looking at it in the Mimic, so we're not disputing for a second that the spiritual side of it isn't real. We aren't, but we're saying that what's took over now, which is why the church is in such disarray, is it's become the Mimic, it's become the imposter, which is person, it's the fake, yeah, the fiction side of everything. So I just thought it were interesting. But if we have a look here at this dis, it says from Old French des, or directly from Latin dis, apart, asunder, in a different direction, between, figuratively, not, un. Also exceedingly, utterly assimilated as diff before f, and to die before most voiced consonants. The Latin prefix is from par, dis, apart, asunder. So the Druid apart, the Druid asunder, would make sense because they were the Mimic and they took the actual ancient knowledge, which of course, if you go with the old trails through Merlin, etc., all these Taliesin and the ancient lore that were kept from Atlantis, that is exactly where we're talking from. Atlantis, so pre-flood, antediluvian, and that Noah, in the days of those stories, was despised, and the people were shocked when they realised that he brought through the dark side of everything from the flood. You know, so it makes sense to me. The more I investigate this stuff, you can see that there clearly is a Mimic, and that Mimic is what's running everything today. So there's been a shift, an absolute shift at some point, and hidden very well, I would say. It's a source of Old English T, Old Saxon T, Old High German Z, and German Zer. The Pi root is a secondary form of Dwis, and thus is related to Latin bis, or twice, originally dvis, and to duo, on notion of two ways, in twain, hence apart, asunder. So two ways, that's interesting. In classical Latin, dis parallel di, so then we're into your quantum grammar, as people are aware of, and di being negative, and had much the same meaning, but in late Latin dis came to be favoured form, and this passed into Old French as des, the form used for compound words formed in Old French, where it increasingly had a private sense of not. In English, many of these words eventually were altered back to dis, while in French many have been altered back to di. The usual confusion prevails. As a living prefix in English, it reverses or negates what it is affixed to. So, when I say Ministry of Defence, there you go, the real meaning to defence isn't, as you've all been promoted, it's actually the opposite. It's removing the fence. So in the United States, it's removing the fence the United States has for itself. In the British Isles, it's also being carried out by the Ministry of No Fence. It's important that we understand how they set this game so that we only believe we understand what it is we're studying, when in fact, you just go through the etymology of things, you can start to see what it really means to them, which keeps them in honour in their system, and you completely ignorant to everything that you look at. So this is law if you're into law, this is biblical if you're into biblical. Because depending upon where you are in yourself, your map is going to depend or determine exactly how you understand whatever it is you are giving your attention to. So it was just interesting because I've only thought about this today. But why is there just two females around this guy who appears to be fulfilling the law in that he's acting according to the law, but as a man in the sense that he's rebuffing? But maybe, as Marco was saying last week, it's showing you as symbolism that you can't fulfill the real law of Genesis 1 if you're fulfilling the law in Genesis 2, because you're going to die. So again, that shows that in what I've suggested, or at least what I can see, is that Genesis 1 is pure, Genesis 2 is this mix-up, and within it is two strains, dark and light, Cain and Abel. So whichever part you're on, if you're in Genesis 2, you're still operating in the fiction, regardless of how you prose your communications to the system. And in all truth, in recent times of things I've been that I've been witness to with other people making moves in this law stuff to try and gain control of their state, using, as they have, all this Christian terminology as making claims to be either this for Christ or that for Christ, etc., etc., hasn't worked. It's not done the job they believe it's doing. Yet these people, when I've spoken to them, are apt to tell me constantly that, oh, well, you won't understand it, Sean, because this is the spiritual path. Because, of course, they look at me as some kind of pagan, which is quite ridiculous. I don't class myself as anything apart from life, which is why I use the term life in the mix. I've had every label thrown at me under the sun. It's irrelevant, it bounces off. However, I do understand that if somebody thinks that's how I am and who I am, that's fine. That's their thought for. I can't change it. And I don't want to change it. You know, this is the way it works. You can't change anybody else's opinion. They have to change it themselves. And thus, it comes back to self-responsibility, because in a lot of cases, it's a mirror for us to look at and say, well, we must be doing something slightly wrong. There's still something we've got missing if people are looking at you in that way. But then in most cases, it's just gamma personalities, or narcissists, as they call them today, hating you because they're afraid to actually break free from their edit that they've had programmed into them since birth. Well, of course, you know, if you are one of these, what would we call them, excitable evangelical kind of mindsets, you aren't going to accept anything outside of what you've already got. Nothing at all. It's not going to happen for you. You're fixed in the grid on that path. And as you can see with this move to all things right wing now, the right side of this is the Noahide system. The left side brought it all into the state. The states have all now been incorporated or privatised to pull it back in through what we know as the right wing war, through the right into the Noahide system. And as we said before, it's very clear to me what's actually going on. It's an next carbon copy of what they did in the last reset. You know, for some 45, 50 years, they are moving peoples around, immigrants here, there and everywhere, especially in the nations they're targeting to take to war, because of course in those nations it's only the born and bred that actually go to war or are conscripted to war. And the same thing's going to happen today. No different. We're in the same boat. The immigrants are in there. They've set up their own little systems. And of course now you've got the fruitcakes running at the top, the priesthood numpties, pulling this war together. And we can all clearly see, if you've got anything about you, that this war has been invented. It's been made, created. It's not just some natural, oh look what's happened. This is real, full-blown manipulation. Why? Well, 3 World War strategy is given to us by Albert Pike, when he makes it clear the Third World War will be when they thrust together the fanatical Zionists and the fanatical Muslims. That's the basis upon which the Third World War is to take place. Interesting now with the moves that you're seeing in the West, with them coming together, deals being done, peace being brokered, and yet you've got this bunch over here running what we class as the West, doing the complete opposite and being for war, and everywhere. It's quite ridiculous. You know, and if anybody can still not see that this whole agenda of war has been to bring us to this point, so thus it's the same idiots running all sides in all wars, and they just get us stupid, numpty nations to do it for them. It's quite ridiculous, really, but that's where we're at. So, just back to that disciple thing, I just thought it's interesting. It's interesting that this idea of what disciple means isn't necessarily as old as the system they're claiming it to be fixed with, which is interesting. There are strange things afoot. Now let's have a look as it goes on a bit here. Deck, which is another take where disciple came from. Where was that? Let me just see. It says Proto-Indo-European root meaning to take or accept. Informs that all or part of, condign, dainty, decent, decor, decorate, decorous. Right, so we don't blah, 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 blah. No, we've looked at that. I just thought I'd pass that through because I found it rather interesting. In all truth, I just thought there's something going on. And of course, Marcus talked of last week of propitiation, which he said Jesus was doing for you. So the story of Jesus was a propitiation. Can't get that out. So let's just have a look, because we didn't actually look at it last week, and it's now late 14th century again. Propitiation, atonement, expiation, from late Latin, propitiationem, nominative, propitatio, an atonement, noun of action from past participle, stem of Latin, propiter, appease, propitiate, from propitiatus, favourable, gracious, kind, well disposed. The current explanation of this, as of Devan, is that it represents propritio from pi, propro, on and on. Even further, source also of Sanskrit, pra and on, Greek pro, before, on and on, from root per, forward, hence in front of, towards, near. It is thus related to Latin prop and near. Earliest recorded form of the word in English is propitiatorium, the mercy seat, place of atonement. And this is 1200 again. All this is, there's got to be something going on here. There's got to be something going. All this is post-Crusades. Is it 2,000 years old? And this mimic. So let's say Christ had 1,000-year reign, and that was from his time up to getting up to the 10th century. We have no idea how that went, apart from if we look at the technology they appear to have, we look at the architecture that they had, the way they operated energy, etc., etc. Is that the reign of Christ? The correct interpretation of his journey, and that we're seeing based on the fact that so much of this, the origins of these words associated to the church story of this, is in fact the 1,000-year reign of the fruit bat. Yeah, do you get what I'm saying there? We've had the 1,000 reign, but we haven't even seen it in this 1,000 years. We've all been on this mimic for 1,000 years, now coming to its fruition. Now that to me, if you apply reason to its potential, is sound. It's a sound concept. Or if you go off the way that the priesthoods are putting it, we're about to start a 1,000-year reign of Satan, where in fact it's coming to the end. They're shitting themselves. And I also, because this has always bothered me, the Fatima prophecies, because no matter which way I look at them, it only serves this mimic. And this, in my opinion, would be how Satan would undo the souls and the hearts of the Christians by, if you believe in these prophecies, you're to take it as a punishment, when in fact what this is at this time today is an attack. We're under attack, we're at war, we don't know it because it's a quiet war, but it's about to go live for its finale. Do you see what I'm saying? This makes sense to me, and I don't know. But one thing I do know is that the prophecies for today are that almost the entire world is deceived, even to the highest points. Well, what does everybody believe today? What are they all following? They're following these patterns that look through etymology to be no older than 7, 8, maybe even 900 years old at their worst. And that so much effort in that period, in what we call the Middle Ages, has been to offer up a false history pre-Crusade time, held together only through the Welsh Chronicles, so-called, the Saxon Chronicles, so-called, and all the other ancient old chronicles that of course were handed into these monks. So Aidan and these other monks back in the day were reforming everything. Because of course if you were writing something at a time when the memories of the last stage are still present, you're still going to have to mix them up, but ultimately you only have to break off certain points, and then you can do that for the 800 years that they've had since anyway, to further undermine what it really means and push in this mimic. So that to me makes more sense. Or why get rid of all this architecture which they've been doing for a few hundred years? Why would they have to do that? You know, it's just it. And then we know that this old mimic, this entire nonsense is in the hands of those societies that like to stay secret. Well, we now know why they need to be secret, because everything they're doing is bullshit. Everything they're doing is to self-serve. So of course it attracts people that are self-serving. Would that not make sense? So they might, they're high-minded, etc., but they're in that system. So it's ultimately, it doesn't really matter what position they've got in that system. It's coming to naught. It's coming to naught. Yeah, Sean Ross, I did follow and watch the rest of that video. Quite interesting. It gives us a good history there, and it gives us a good idea as to what's possibly just gone on with not so much, the collapse of the Silicon Valley Bank. They've shifted the swag. They've moved it. Francis is now ill. What's going to happen here now? Is this the point at which the final pope is no more, Rome is no more, because it's all of a sudden become Noahide? So if you take that on board, this isn't the end of the world. This is the end of the shitbags. This is the fulfilment of their great work, which is coming to zero. But there's a lot of shit first to come with all to feel and see, because I've always felt that, you know, when they were bigging up the immense people that lived here, the big population stuff, that everybody that's played a part in this last week age, we're back again to see and witness the game again. So it gets fixed in our own minds that we're not actually down here just to have a good time and toss about. We're here to nurture whatever wounds we're given in infancy and heal them. And how we heal them is going to depend on what kind of character we are. Are we going to further the hate and the pain for the next generations because we chose to do battle with them in violent ways, in evil ways, in narcissistic ways? Or is it that old-fashioned idea of coming to a point where you've recognised your own playing it all and you're happy to forgive all that came to you because you're seeing it now as the very mechanic that gave you the means to see through the mist that you're existing in? Maybe. Who knows? But pretty clear from Marco's saying that the script that the religion, let's say post-Crusades, has promoted puts Jesus in a position of atonement, expiation, for all here to learn. Now, then you get into, you can start to see why there's a discrepancy between the teachings of Jesus that are not put into the canon of the church. Makes a bit more sense that they're maybe arcing on to the other side of what the man was actually teaching that were taken up for 1,000 years and that's been demolished. I think, you know, the fact that they got the Crusades together showed that by that point the idea of love, etc., disappeared because everybody were happy to go off to crusade. Same in the First World War. All the males, everybody were happy to go off to First World War and thus remove those said males from said nations. And they're doing it again. Same gig. Exactly the same crack, just obviously we've got different toys, using different terminology, etc., etc., different faces. And but it's still the same battle, is it not? It's this antagonist system that's always trying to take over the existing system. They call themselves Jews. I disagree, because if you actually look at the theology, it's got nothing to do with the Hebrew tradition. Now, that being the case, that means that you can't call yourself an Hebrew if you're following the Zohar. You can't. It's impossible. You're an idiot. No matter how clever you are not providing reality to yourself. So then naturally you're not going to promote it to anybody else. But if the system you're promoting and holding on to gives you an upper hand in whatever future may be, then naturally then that's what you're operating to. It's self, isn't it? It's self-aggrandizement in all cases. I'm better than you. I know more than you, etc., etc. That picks it up. It makes sense to me, this kind of, if you look at it from these perspectives, because clearly the world today is deceived. Am I one man on my own? Am I dangerous? Am I the one that's deceived and causing all this in the world? I don't think so, because I'm just investigating. I'm not pushing any power with this idea and saying you must believe. But I like to investigate things. I like to see where they go, because I don't follow an edit, a script. I have nothing there. I've self-educated. At school, I picked up what I wanted to pick up. What I didn't feel I needed, I didn't pick up any further. That was the end of it. It's educating myself. So naturally, I'm coming to everything clean. There's no edit. I suppose there was at the beginning, because there were certain philosophers I liked, certain concepts I enjoyed, and you would then apply that edit sometimes if you were studying something else. But the good thing, I recognised that I was doing that, and that were interesting, because then you stop doing it, and you have to apply yourself to then study the other side, because you always fix one way. If you've got an edit to one side and they're giving you, oh, they did this to us and they did that to us and that, and you don't bother to look at the other side, what they're saying. You look at the other side, what they're saying, and then you can see, oh, hang on a minute, I've been reading this, but the other side did that because we did this. And then you can start to see how it's just a load of nonsense, basically. And it's still two boys and two girls falling out, gathering gangs together in schoolyard. It's the same old crap, no different. And unfortunately, a lot of people follow it. Do they not? So, I just thought I'd pass that on because it interested me, it intrigued me, and I thought it might intrigue you. So I thought we'd have a look. Let's have a look at the script that's going to force everybody into paying ridiculous amounts of tax to the point that you can't fart outside without the cameras picking it up and suing you and removing credits from your account. And, oh, look at that. This is live, remember. This is a live map, so it changes all the time. Look at where all the pollution is. Look at where it isn't. Look at it. Where it all is are not subject, which, obviously, they're not subject to it, otherwise they won't be doing it. And the rest of the world is subject to it, but it ain't happening. Looks like there's a little bit of something going on in northern Spain. Probably, I don't know, is it too early for fires or is that a bit of a volcanic? Don't know. As I say, I've not paid attention this week. But clearly when you look on here, you know, we're not seeing much in all these nations that they're going to tax to death. So, it's garbage, isn't it? It's rubbish. And that is SO2SM. That looks like it's all over the shop, but obviously the real dark fort, again, it's always up in these same places. It's interesting though, you've got all this going on up in Siberia, where apparently, according to what we're told, it's just arid land. There's nothing there. Why would that? So, is this chemical or gaseous substance that is picking up on this SO2SM a natural occurrence? It's interesting. But then when you look at Africa, you're in Central and Africa, not much going on there. So what's really going on at the other side of Russia? What's really been happening over there? Because we get pictures of this arid, barren land, and I'm not so sure. I think there's been things going on there since Stalin created his version of the home for the Jews in his career, which we don't talk about. We have mentioned it and spoken on it on video way back. Interesting, but looking at that, if that pollution has got anything to do with industry, then clearly there's a lot more going on over the other side of Eastern Europe than we're told, and also there in the northern part of Siberia, into the northwest. Interesting. It's interesting stuff. What's this saying? So let's see if we got air temperatures. Yeah, we have. Because this is interesting. Because if you look at the sea temperatures 7-8 years now, and when you've got El Niños and this stuff, the pockets of heat were massive. The oceans were really warm. But you look at it today, and if you're looking for what's really going on with temperature, it's pretty clear that the oceans are cooling at an alarming rate. Where have we got here? Let me just have a look. I'm trying to look for temperature, but I'm not finding it. No, it's not going to show me. That's wave power. Now then. No, it's a shame I can't find. I don't know whether it's on this map or not, but I need to look at temperatures at some point because it's very interesting. When you look at the temperature, what's actually going on, because it's not what we're taught at all, because they're all about warming when clearly there's a lot of cooling going on. In all truth, so let's have a look here. To do that first. So what's here to that, fellas? An interesting bit of a... But again, it's only come to me today that the disciple side of things, the two Marys, why are they so important? And there's no real male figure in there. And then, you know, what's going on at the hospitals, in those temples of the Knights Hospitallers, when Mother haplessly signs into this first part of the trust. You know, it's all about the mother. Passed about, mother's name, take the family name of the father, but ultimately, all the signatures, the witnesses, etc., it's looking for female. It's always the mother. It's a bit worrying, that, I have to say. There's a lot of connotations that can come off that. Gary says, good day, at 5:30 am. Oh, yeah, the clocks have moved, haven't they, Gary? That's good, it makes it a lot more awkward, doesn't it, now? Is it 9 hours you guys are in front of us? So it does make it all... I had it upside down last time. So yeah, now it's a lot more difficult for Australia and Blighty to be in sync live. So well done for getting up at 5:30 in the morning, your China. Martin, how you doing, Martin? Good evening to you. Mew says, Claudio said the Phoenix Rising is the 14th for us, 15th for New Zealand. Last week, what do you mean? Hang on a minute. Oh, he said it last week, right, got you. So it's the 14th for us and the 15th for New Zealand, right? Thanks for that, that's good data. Paul says, yeah, we've done this on the 30th and Moo's on the 19th. Who are the two Marys in the Bible? Mary Magdalene and Mary's mother. Yes. It's just... I just thought about it today. It needs further contemplation, but there's a reason, and it's not. We know. I can see why the church has done it that way. But there's got to be more to that symbolism than we're being given. CME, is that? Why am I not? Hang on a minute. Have I got? I'm not seeing. There's all the comments here. They're not giving me all the names. Is it ME? Boom. There you go. Well said, Sean. It's an entity, not you. It is, and it's dead. And if you're trying to run around capitulating to its law, by definition of the fact, no matter how high or spiritual you think you are, you're going to die because you're dead, because you're a fiction. You're fulfilling a fictitious law. Maybe. Again, we're exploring. We're always exploring because we want to know what the hell's gone on. Emmy says, also men, women, those acting in official capacity, and all persons dead, said to be lost at sea. Indeed. Or if you go to the... So let's say the Vatican takes everything on trust. It's administering the estate because you're in sin. Ultimately, it's the Vatican, isn't it, that's licensing the kingdoms for land and then all the tenancies that come beneath it. Ultimately, it always goes back to the Vatican. And I have presented a book earlier in these live streams, The Sword, Mitre and Cloister by, I forgot her name, very clearly presents the history of how the monasteries were taken over in the 10th century, 909 AD, specifically pointed out as the beginning, when the Carolingians were taking over what was Merovingian side of things back in old European history. And they inverted the Benedictine doctrine on land. So everything shows us that there's a difference between the original church and the shit that we've had through since Crusades, because it's done nothing but bloodlet. It's been done nothing. It's done everything the antagonist you'd expect from the antagonist, hasn't it? You know. But then, if you're on person, maybe, I don't know. It's hard to come to terms with because the histories are so confusing. Mine says bloodlines, laws of the bloodlines, like royal family firstborn, must be pure blood. You see, again, it's a mimic, isn't it? You know, it's a mimic. I can understand why family. I mean, I'll say this to you now, as a fact. If I knew when I were 18, 19, what I know now, I would have sought out a rhesus negative partner as a natural thing, without a doubt. It's not to say I regret anything I've done, I don't. But if I knew what I know now then, that's what I'd have done. So I can understand where the origin of all this obsession and being careful to who you procreate with. It's important. And I think that's going to be important in the future. It's going to come back as a really important, because the last thing you want is this fruitcake priesthood getting its shit into your creations down here. So I can understand why that's the case. And that doesn't necessarily just mean for I'm talking about in general why races were only breeding with their own. It is actually important, very, very important. Because then you're in sync with your ancestors, as it would be said. As opposed to you've got two lots of genetics pulling you which way and everywhere. Just a thought. Boom, there you go, well said, Sean. I'm not sure what that was to, but good. Have you considered Mary, mother of Jesus, and Magdalene, mother of Jesus' child? Bloodlines. Well, yeah, I mean, if you get into all the Gnostic stuff, that's exactly what they're saying. But then you've got all this shit that the Templars have pumped out and sucked everybody up in. Again, is a mimic. It's built that, like as if being born 2,000 years after the man that did that, what he did, as if any offspring later is going to be as good as him. It doesn't work like that. Very few people that do great things in this world, their offspring don't tend to go anywhere near it. It's not normal that, you know, it passed great. Let's not call it that. Let's call it applied spiritual learning as an individual isn't necessarily something that passes on in genes. That's a character trait, isn't it? You know, but they're going to form all this garbage on this nonsense that we've been pulled in through the Templars about the bloodline of Jesus. What does it matter? It means nothing, really. It means nothing, because it doesn't work that way. It's an individual choice to tread or not the path of learning, of understanding. It's not hereditary. The only thing that's hereditary is that eternal thing that gives this priesthood the ability to keep them in power over what is thrust upon you, and that is the surname. That is the eternal thing that they have. But of course, if you're religious, that you're not seeing the use of the term eternal in that sense. You're seeing it in the way you've been shown to see it, and you're never going to see past that unless you allow yourself to at least examine other stuff, other data, other information. Narcissist, apparently, I'm a narcissist. Oh, okay. Well, I think we all can have tendencies to narcissistic behaviour. But the true narcissists are very dangerous. They're dangerous people. They're like the gammas. So the gammas, if you will, are people who have the capacity in the mind to think, to understand concepts, but what they haven't got is that ability to turn it into action. That's fine, it doesn't matter. But where the gamma personality starts to become a narcissist is they can see those that have both capacities, and they pour scorn on them. They hate them and they attack them. And it is narcissism, because they know full well that they have the same capacity mentally to think in terms of the way these other people do, but they don't have the capacity to put it into action. And they hate themselves for that, but then project it on others. So, yeah, Anyway, but we all have, we could class as narcissistic traits in some respects or another. It's part of the human condition, if you're a human. Propitiate, oh, for God's sake, I'm not even going to try and say it. Always thought that meant buying love from someone. Well, now we know, have we not learned? If we've got a word we don't understand, or we're being told means this, go and get up that etymological dictionary and stick it in there and have a look. Then have a look at Black's and have a look at Bouvier's, any dictionary law, and see how they're translated that. And you can see then they've used the etymology. But there's definitely something in the fact that all the etymology to these terms that we are told go back 2,000 years clearly don't. It's clear that they don't. Something has taken place and people are not seeing it. Touche more full, says LFX. Always thought, yeah. Okay. Some people believe that this will be the last pope. Well, the prophecy, as so written, makes that case. Yes, definitely. Well, you don't need a pope in the Noahide. This whole system is going in to this Noahide game. Not good. And I've said before, decapitation. Okay, so we've seen it in the physical. Blah, blah, blah. Then they present that out there, guillotines, all this stuff. Trump saying the same kind of thing. But ultimately, decapitation in its true form, he's talking about decapitation as standing. And now we understand that to be through title. Yeah. So again, decapitation, the whole of Christendom, it would be decapitated in an instant. But first they have to get rid of the males. Remember what the plan is, males out there. You white monkeys. My brothers and sisters. If they can get rid of you males out of your country to this war, all you feminists, you fruitcake females that have gone out of your way to demolish the family unit because you had a right to, then you're going to pay the price, because it doesn't matter what you say, what excuses you come up to the people that are going to be here, that you're going to be offering that up to. It's not going to work, is it? You know what kind of characters we're talking about, you know what they're going to do. So that's the setup that they've got going for their false judgment in this shindig called the end of the fruit bat Satan's reign. But they're going to punish you. They're going to punish you bad if you don't get a grip and wake up. You know, if you've got offspring and you're a mother and you've shoved the real dad out, it's about time you're wised up and realise that it's not in your interest to keep him out of the system. Unless, of course, he's a fruitcake. And the same goes for the males. If you're a father, it's about time you started to recognise that you created those little flea bags. And just because you don't think you're responsible, you better start reckoning the fact that spiritually, you goddamn well are. As simple as that. So, you know, these are the kind of concepts that people are going to have to start to come to now, because, you know, they're moving at such a fast rate, it's quite ridiculous. Cash. Where's cash going? You know, people talk, oh, look what they're doing. Look, no, you're doing it. You're doing it. You know, wherever you go now, wherever I go, very, very rare do I see anybody else pulling cash out of their pocket to pay for whatever product they're buying. I do as many times as I can. There are occasions I don't, but most cases I will draw and use cash. But that lockdown system has done its job. Everybody now, oh, I don't have to, I'm born idle, it's too heavy in my pocket because I'm a big pussy. You know, cash is going, and it's not because they're doing it. They set the system up and everybody's doing it. Now they're ready to go to the next phase, almost. Ridiculous. Self-responsibility is the only format that has to be brought to the fore, because that is the only philosophy that pulls you back to sanity, because once you recognise that you are responsible for what comes to your world, you'll never change it, because you're always blaming somebody else, because it's so far easier. Volcano in Spain, is that what it is? Right, good stuff. How are they going to say global warming, especially after that winter? Which winter? What? Here, you mean? I don't think we had quite a bad winter here, to be fair. Quite mild. We had a couple of spells, but wrong side of year, really. We usually have the cold stuff, January, February. So, yeah. Debbie says she's not a feminist. No, of course you're not. You're a married girl. Oh, yeah. You know, you can deal. You're grown up enough to have a relationship with a male. That's how it works, you know. You can only have a relationship between two people if they're both grown up enough to recognise that they each have to not only recognise each other's individuality, but pull it together as a couple at all points, and never let anything come between your family unit and you two. That's the downside, and that started in the 60s. Free love. I, me, give me. I want, I'm gonna get. You have to accept it. If I want to have other people, you have to. I mean, what kind of bollocks is that? But how many people are out there running around doing it, giving it, offering it? You know, it's just stupid. That's when relationships don't work, because there isn't a relationship. There's no trust. There's no appreciation of each other. There's no mutual respect. It's like one party is in there for maybe convenience. Maybe he got stuck, or she got stuck. But I think that's what happens if you don't pay attention to the kind of people that you're courting for their attention. And Debbie says she didn't breed either. Well, that's a choice, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you don't want to have children, that's fine. I have to say, before I had children, I didn't think I wanted children. In fact, right up until the night the first daughter were born, I didn't think I was ready for children. But the minute they pop out, after all blood and guts has gone, and you can see a flea bag, you're like, oh, really? And then you realise that your life isn't your own anymore, and you better behave yourself a bit more and stop running around courting adventure and danger. So it does you every man and male good, I believe. But you've got to pick it up. You can't half do it. It's got to be in there until they're of an age that they don't need you rattling on in their lug holes. You didn't breathe, she says. I practiced a lot. What did you practice, man racer? It says, Chris Hoy says, do you reckon stuff will get turned off, like gas and electric, even food? Definitely with gas and electric. I mean, they're having a fit about gas at the moment, because obviously this year, even though they've done all what they've done, where if you're on prepayment meters or on a monthly contract, the government sent the money to them. They allocated it to your electricity, did you notice? They didn't allocate it to the gas. They've done everything they can in this winter to put you off gas, to scare you off gas. It just made me worse. I just put more gas in, because I don't really care. Because it's a load of garbage. This entire charade is bullshit. You know, we're under attack. It's not a punishment, we're under attack. They've got you to believe it's a punishment, but it's not. This is an attack, full blown, and it's a snidey attack. It's the coward attack. It's the way the coward does business. They can't come on front on, it's the undermining. Yeah, it's very feminine in its nature, let's be honest. Very moon orientated. The West is the sun. Somewhere they out there get it done, which is why everything that's ever really good and gets invented comes from, that side of things. It wasn't always the case, but that's been the case for quite a long time. It's all coming from the moon. It's all coming from the subversive side of human nature, because they don't have the balls to front it properly, and they never had. Asking for a friend, he says, Sean, if I said the talking voice, Mr. Ed, is that powerful? Yeah. If I said the talking voice, Mr. Ed, is that powerful? I'm missing that. I'm not getting what you're saying there. There's going to be an extremely long winter 2024 till May. Well, I'm saying no, mate. I'm saying no because I'm not. I don't know. I know this, how they work. That they're always hedging the bets, and it's down to us as to how quick we get these moves going. How do we respond to it? They just, I mean, 2008, they couldn't believe how America just collapsed to it, gave it everything it wanted. Goldman Sachs, all these elitist money collecting agencies, they couldn't believe they managed it. Same again, 2020. They couldn't believe they've got it on, got it done. They've done it. They've done it. You know, I mean, it's for people that didn't get involved in that, such as I, it ended quite a long time ago because we're not still living it. We're not in any way. So, well, I'll say that. When I stopped going to funerals, I was no longer involved in the entire affair. Because I don't watch TV unless I'm at somebody's house, which is rare. So I wasn't in the game. Once I put out all my stuff at the beginning, and then once I saw everybody jumping on it, that was it. I thought, okay, there's nothing for me here, and nobody wants to listen at this time because they're all terrified. So for those that didn't, if you stop going to funerals, it's been a game that went a long time ago. But for those that did, it's as real today as it were then, isn't it? So it's a choice. You chose the path your mind will follow. And the map, territory analogy again. If you're following your map, there's your experience. It shows you. Your map's wrong. Territory is where you need to be. What's really going on out there, and not what you believe's going on in your head. So it's a good analogy, is that Adam gave us back in the day. Ask out lol. Well, I noticed today we had no came in the sky. And was that just like a normal spring day? Beautiful today. The sky were clear, the clouds were clear, the blue was blue. You know, I don't know, even the birds had an extra tweet in their belly. But it was definitely a normal day, as I remember growing up. But I also remember how long they've been putting these trails over as well. But nothing like what they do today. So it was a nice day today because, of course, we had a breather and they didn't trail us. So, but yeah, I mean, I studied that a long time ago. It's terrifying if it's real. But the ESAT is the more important one. It's the new one. Though they still use the HARP system as well. But it's all gone ESAT now. Ray, I don't know whether you're aware of that. No idea why I'm saying this. You will all forget. Anyway, what do you mean? In the winter? Well, you know, everybody thought that was going to happen this winter. Everybody thought, I even thought they were going to probably try and shut off all these things. But at the moment, they're trying to manipulate your behaviour change. Behaviour change it into stop using gas because you want to save the world. Well, fuck the world. It's the earth we want to be saving. And the earth pumps out all this energy naturally. But there's nothing wrong with taking the oil either. It produces itself all the time. It's like the blood of the earth. So I'm not into this get off the gas malarkey. Especially when you look at how did America move from being the biggest polluter to one of the lowest because it turned to gas. Does that not tell you that gas is the way? No. Doesn't suit these elites because they want you all on electricity. Yeah. Lucifer wants everybody on electricity only. Apart from, of course, if you're the elite, that's a different game, you can have what you want. So electricity is the way, that's the way they want to sort it, that's the way they want to trap you. Went to Sainsbury's and the checkout would not take the banknotes. Really? See, that's bad, isn't it? It's not good. It's not good. You know, these food outlets are going to become, so as the Tesco, Sainsbury's, Lidl, Aldi, all these so-called supermarkets are going to become the deciders of whether you live or die. Have you thought about that? So these people that are rallying to own these operations are clearly sucking up on the wrong tit. Interesting that, but that's what's going to happen. So they're not taking notes at them, are they not? Well, that's a bit disgusting, isn't it? But not unexpected. 2020, we had a business and continued to take cash from the elderly. They had to pay the bank to pay cash into their account years soon. Well, I think a lot of what we're going on is getting rid of the old school ideas. In a big way, same here. Because of course I have a lot of feelers out in hospitals, etc. So I get a picture of what's gone on in this old charade. Last year it was mainly Muslims that were being killed or had popped themselves off. And this year so far it seems to be blacks, the black culture that's been knocked off. And I have a take on this. So if you look at the Asians, the Muslims that came over here 30, 40 years ago, appreciated this place, wanted, altered their way of living to this way because they could see it were better than where they come from. They have to go. That idea can't be pushed amongst these immigrants that they're bringing in who are already pre-bred to hate. You with me? So that's what I'm seeing. They're getting rid of the old stock that are content, understand that this nation is a lot better than where they came from, because we're always pushing for freedom, respect, and mutual cooperation. That has to die. That has to die to bring about Albert Pike's Third World War scenario. The fanatical Muslims and the fanatical Zionists to kick off. But because they've flooded them everywhere across the world, once that kicks off, that's going to go and kick off everywhere. Now look at what's just happened. Netanyahu's in. He's not having as much success as he normally gets. The Israelis are going bog shy over some of the changes that have been made. In the same way you've got it all going on all over Europe. I mean, they're only focused to Paris, but it's going on in a lot more places than just Paris. So there's a real move against this stuff. I mean, I've noted here that these 15-minute cities, they're putting up these garden things, these planters, and they're being demolished, they're being moved, they're being demolished, and people are not having it. Good, make sure it stays that way. Because you can see what they're doing. They'll set it up in the core of the cities, because of course it's corporate, and they'll just slowly spread and spread it out, and that's how I see it working. So it's going to be a time period, it's not going to happen overnight, so people, you see, this is another thing with people when you're in this game. It's difficult not to absorb this stuff and constantly feel like it's going to happen tomorrow. That is a difficult one to separate, and I learned that back in the day when I came online at first, that you're absorbing so much stuff, you just reckon it's going to happen tomorrow, and it's not. You're seeing the bigger picture because you're looking for it, you're seeing the agenda. But you've got to also keep in mind that it's all stepping stone stuff. To achieve this, they have to achieve all this over here. So it's all slow. Keep moving that way. So, if you can get that in your mind, so you're not always thinking it's going to happen tomorrow, it does make your path a little bit easier to deal with. Because you're not fretting and shitting yourself. Because that's an easy trap to fall into. You know what I mean? Very easy trap to fall into. Oh my God, I've seen it all now. Oh, my horse crawling on the floor. I don't know. Well guys, I've run out of yammer. You seem to run out of questions. I wasn't going to do one tonight, but I'm glad I did, because I didn't expect that I'd be in a position to actually do one tonight, so we did. Don't know what it'll be like next week. We'll see. But hopefully we might be in a position to do it again and have another chinwag. Any questions, any points you want to put forward? If not, we'll call this a one. And it's all good. It's all good. Right, good. We're done. We're done for another week. Right, chaps, thanks for joining. I know you weren't expecting it, but thanks anyway. Mods, thanks for your efforts again as usual. And there's only one thing for me to say there then, isn't there? Thanks for joining, and until the next time.
electronic